Hello everyone, my name is Timo Elliott and I'm an innovation evangelist with SAP. I'm here at SAP TechEd in Amsterdam with my distinguished guests and we're going to be talking about Agile analytics. So first, please could you introduce yourselves? Roland.
Sure, Timo. Ronald Konijnenburg. I work for CGI as a principal BI consultant. As you can see by the shirt, I'm also a proud SAP mentor. I'm a consultant. I implement analytical solutions within clients, and I've been working with SAP since '95 or so. And I'm also globally responsible for HANA within CGI.
Thank you. Andy.
Hey Timo, I'm Andy Steer. I'm UK Group CTO for Itelligence. We're a global SAP VAR, and my job is I lead what we call our customer visioning team. So I get to look after the guys who go out and evangelize about what SAP technologies can do for businesses. My own background is kind of BI, data warehousing, that kind of thing, and I also, for my sins, look after our HANA initiatives as well.
Right.
So between us, we've seen a lot of both successful and failed analytics initiatives over the years. It's my contention that one of the things that the biggest thing that companies have struggled with analytics is not knowing how to do analytics right. We've got a decade of best practice on doing that. It's more that the business changes so fast, the requirements change so fast, that the technology hasn't been able to change flexibly enough or fast enough to meet business needs. What's your reaction?
Well, I think first of all, if you look at terms of agility, I think the way we nowadays implement BI is different than what we used to do. You see a lot of traction in the way we are using implementing SAP BI. We're using Scrum methodology, for instance. If you're looking why IT is often lagging behind when you're implementing analytical solutions is of course because we have a beautiful enterprise data warehouse and then we think we have to close the door for everything which is, let's say, not made of concrete. And it makes it a bit complicated for our end users, of course, to, let's say, interact and make sure that they can build their own type of reporting. And I think that stuff is now getting traction, even though self-service BI has already been on the market for 10 years, or at least as a methodology. But I think we've also seen indeed some bad examples of that, and I think it's a bit of a sort of a cycle. So.
Well, I still read articles, I read one just yesterday, that says the problem is that the architecture isn't beautiful enough. I read an architecture that said, all of the problems are because people didn't design the data warehouse right, and only if they'd done that, they would have been successful. But my contention is that you can never get it right because it changes too fast.
No, to me, it's about time to value, time to decision. So I think what we see just hugely is what we tend to call decision lag, right? So somebody has a problem, they need an answer to a question. Just the physical amount of time that it takes them to get the information they need in order to make that decision is just too long, because we go through this kind of really painful value chain with data, from source, the scrubbing, cleansing, data warehouse, all of these things. And in reality, for most operational decision making, we don't need to do that stuff. Kind of 90% accurate in kind of 1/100th of the time is good enough. And I think the changes we're seeing in approaches for delivery and real-time data platforms and also mobility and integrated analytics into business apps are really closing down that time to decision, that decision lag.
So let's talk concretely about what has changed. So part of it is on the technology side. So the data warehouses, if you were to do a data warehouse today, I think you would build it in a very different way. I'd build it in memory. You'd do it with detailed data. You wouldn't mess around with all your aggregate tables. You'd be able to update your data warehouse much, much faster. And you'd also keep a lot of data outside the data warehouse, maybe in something like a Hadoop, where you can read it as you need it, schemaless.
I wouldn't call it a data warehouse for starters.
Well, so what is a data warehouse?
Well, because I think
you probably would find most businesses, if you drew a line down a whiteboard and you wrote data warehouse on one side, they'd probably put Agile on the other side. Right, because they just wouldn't
become
see the
a term
going
associated
together.
with inflexible.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we need to talk about agile data streams, or your fabled network of truths, right? How we can pick up data from various locations and maybe not consolidate that data into one place, but deliver it in a trusted way as quickly as possible to people who need it. And that may not require staging it in a traditional data warehousing model.
I think you also, what you just said a couple of minutes ago, I think it nails it. You basically have types of data. You have data, of course, which needs to be validated, harmonized, consolidated, and that needs to be
finance, for example.
Exactly that single source of truth. But next to that, there is a wide variety indeed of operational information where you want to combine data, that's indeed a network of truth, where you want to make sure that also end users have the flexibility and the room to also enhance data themselves. And I think that is indeed the opportunity you are facing. Just classifying the data, making sure that traditionally we've always classified, at least what I've been seeing the last 10 years, everything is made of concrete, you don't touch it, this is the truth and that's it. And we want to give more flexibility, indeed, to decrease that time to information, because that is critical.
And the fastest area of growth in business intelligence has been in the growth of data discovery tools that allow people to flexibly mash information. Some of it is trusted, some of it is local, my own local files, my departmental files. Hence, tools like SAP Lumira. I'm proudly wearing my Data Geek t-shirt. Andy too. We'll make sure you have one by the end of the show.
Exactly. Yeah.
So SAP Lumira, you can download it for free on saplumira.com, is a tool that allows you to mash data on the fly. And the growth in those kinds of tools has been critical. Now, I get pushback from sort of traditional IT departments saying, but we don't trust people to mash up data. They don't know how to do it right. They're going to do it badly, and they're going to make bad decisions. What would you say to that?
Well, those IT teams probably don't realize that their customers internally are already using those tools. Right.
So they're already making bad decisions behind their backs.
You know, if it's not Lumira, it's Excel. You know, if business users will find a way, right? And I think IT for a long time has tried to be the the owner and the custodian and the single point for all of these things. And the reality is, I think, all of us who work in IT need to remember that IT's job is there to support the business in what the business needs to do. So the data doesn't belong to IT, right? The data belongs to the users, and we need to kind of find ways to democratize that and give them access to it. And yes, we need to try and find a way to do that in a governance model which keeps IT happy, right? Yeah. So we don't conflict with SOX requirements and all of those kind of things. But we have to find a way of freeing it up. And I think tools like Lumira are great at allowing you to do that. Sandbox maybe some market research data, get that in, mash it up with your corporate data very, very quickly to get an idea of what campaigns you want to run, rather than delivering that data to IT and waiting 3.5 months for it to surface in the data warehouse.
I've personally been frightened by how many BI departments define themselves by their ownership of an infrastructure rather than their ownership of a business problem. I actually went to a large UK retailer a couple of weeks ago. I was invited to do a session on business intelligence internal for their analysts. But they have a great initiative where they're introducing sandboxing with data discovery, so that all the departments can grab all of the information they need. It's completely up to them. They can load it, but it's under the governance and under the overall control of the IT department. I think it's the best of both worlds.
Yeah, it's like having a buffet, right? Like if you think how you produce a buffet at a party, you don't just randomly collect loads of stale food and put it on the table for people to poison themselves. You prepare the food correctly, you put it there correctly, but then you let people, if somebody just wants to fill their plate with bread rolls,
that's fine. If I want to bring my own hamburgers, is that okay?
Well, you take the risk of doing that, but if you educate you and you know what you're doing, that's okay.
Well, I think indeed the key message here is it needs to be managed in a way, and there needs to be some governance around it indeed, because the last thing we want, of course, is that, and we all have that same perspective, is that indeed these departments get the data set, enhance it, and proclaim it as being a new truth. But that's really a black and white situation. There is lots and lots of room in between indeed to have, with good governance, making sure that people know how to act sufficiently and also correctly with data, and make sure you embed it in your organization. So the managed part is quite important there in this whole equation.
But I think but data governance, we're seeing with with tools like Information Steward, you can actually put data ownership and data stewardship in the hands of the business users. They can have data quality dashboards. We have one of our customers does data quality awards on a monthly basis. So they measure data quality, and the operatives at the front end who are putting in the data, the people who've got the highest levels of data quality, they get a prize each month. So those kind of things, help the business users to understand how they own the data and help them manage it.
So talking about agility, part of it is the new technology opportunities, whether it's data discovery tools like Lumira, whether it's in-memory like HANA, or it's big data schemaless. I can just store everything and I figure out how to structure it as I read it, not as I read it in. But of course, it's not about technology. We mentioned changes to processes briefly. What have you seen as best practice for how to do analytics putting in place as processes to make sure that the businesses get what they need and IT gets what it needs?
Well, what I mentioned, what I see coming up quite frequently is that it's the methodology of implementing BI that has fundamentally changed, and I see lots and lots of Scrum techniques used now to make sure that we don't lock ourselves up in a cellar anymore, and make sure that after 3 months we come out and we say, is this what you want? And I think that is the biggest change we see, at least that's what I see in an implementation approach.
Yeah, we'd agree. Scrum methodologies, Agile methodologies, public product backlogs that people could contribute to. You know, I need this feature, I want to be able to do these things. Group voting on what are the highest requirements that people want. You know, taking priority setting away from IT and putting it in the hands of the business
using
users.
collaboration tools as
Absolutely.
part of it.
So yeah,
and demoing.
there are some available, I believe. Yeah.
SAP Jam is a great collaboration tool you can do with your BI.
So doing that, and also just I guess the much maligned BI competency center. I think the core principles around the BI competency center I think are still valid, but I think much more of a virtual competency center. You know, get those champions out working in the businesses, being the leaders, the analytic champions in their own departments, and then have them collaborate together against a background of strong governance.
I'd actually say it's slightly more subtle in that I actually think that a centralized team of people works well for BI Competency Center, but the people should physically be sitting opposite their business people so they can actually collaborate on a piece of paper if necessary.
We could call them analysts, right?
In fact, if for lowest hanging fruit, you want to change something in your organization, make sure your BI people are sitting in the same physical location as the business people they're serving. That on its own can solve a lot of problems.
Not in IT, not locked away in IT.
Right, not locked away in
I guess also
IT.
it blends a bit. I mean, business and IT also has a tendency, and then we probably get to the whole analyst discussion, is that it is a thin line between business and IT. Especially we have these really novice business users who have a strong IT feeling, and also the other way around. It also has a tendency of blending in a bit. So, but indeed, these core competencies have, you see them sort of mixing up.
I just think we need to focus much more heavily as BI professionals, both internal in organizations and external. I think we just got to focus much more on business outcomes. So what is the business trying to achieve? What's that change in behavior? And everything we do for BI just needs to be about supporting that. And if that means that we need the shiny new in-memory technology, then fine, that comes afterwards. But it's got to be about the outcome that the business is after. And I think if we put the people in the teams with the business users and they talk about outcomes, then you will deliver the things that they need.
And so far we've been assuming that people are clamoring for more agility, which is absolutely true. We know there are people that do want more flexibility. The business people are going out. They're buying their own tools on their own credit cards sometimes. But at the same time, we also have the situations where people are quite happy with their formal reports. I bumped into somebody at a previous conference that they've been using the same reports for 13 years without any change.
No refresh.
No, well, I think they refreshed them.
It's of course also dependent on the type of user, of course. It is a traditional way of classifying users. If you're really a consumer, you just want to have your report on your iPad or in your mailbox every Monday. Those type of users are most often just quite happy with structured reports, and that's it.
But they're not agile people, right?
Yeah, and also, I mean, lots of companies where I do lots of implementations, and I mean, data quality, making sure that the data is accurate enough is also already quite some of an achievement for some companies, or a big achievement. Making sure that the data is accurate, and if you then have a format of a report which is static, people are extremely happy with data which is validated and is correct, and that is still something which is very important to companies, of course.
I have a big, reporting's not going to go away, right? But my general feeling is, I think reports are about telling people stuff they know, right? So it's your statutory reporting. You already know those things from your finance team, but you've got to put them down on a report so that other people can know it and that it's there. But really, analytics isn't about that, right? So analytics isn't about reporting, really, is it? Yeah, analytics is about answering the challenges that lie in front of you. The analogy about, the rear view mirror is this big in your car and the windscreen's this big because that's where you should be looking. Yeah. And I think we've got that challenge at the moment. And many organizations, you're right, they just see reporting. But I think our job is to try and help them see the value of moving to a more analytical outcome.
I do think people don't build enough flexibility into analytics. I always say it's like a bicycle. If you stop moving, you're going to fall over. It should be constantly changing, otherwise you're not doing analytics right. Final point before we go, what given these new technologies, given the new processes, what are the remaining big barriers that are stopping us from getting to analytics nirvana?
That's a good question. Well, I think there are still some technical limitations, of course, which should be straightened out. Even though if you look at SAP Lumira, the way this is progressing, and my heart is a very technological heart, so the way this is progressing rapidly is amazing. And now we also have the ability to connect to BW automatically and that sort of thing. So I think technology is a very important factor to make it as stable and useful as possible, of course. In terms of getting companies agile and analytics agile, I think these sort of events and these sort of talks help, of course, to get some feedback and to get some cultural change and awareness. I think that is quite important.
So we live in interesting times, right? Because technology is not a barrier anymore, right? So you can do anything that you pretty much
lots of
want to
IT,
do.
lots of people in the audience going,
Right, yeah. Yeah. If
in
you
theory,
want to do
it's not a barrier.
Yeah, but if you want to do it and you can equate the value to it and build a value case, you can get what you need. The issue for me, therefore, turns much more to the human side of it. And it's about adoption. It's about encouraging best behavior with analytics and helping people to become more aware. But the critical thing for me is, time and again, we still see operational systems and analytics. We have to deliver analytics into the operational systems when people need them, so they make the decision, whether to take that order because of bad debt with that customer, those kind of things. We've got to get the two together.
Sounds like a great point to end on. So thank you very much for your time, Ronald and Andy, and thanks for listening.